Thank you for joining us today for the SR 161 Hylebos Creek Fish Passage Project Lunch and Learn. My name is Kristen Anderson, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. We're going to launch a poll, or like a question is going to pop up on your screen, and we'd love to hear where you're participating from. Please let us know by answering the question. And I'm going to give it just a minute, see where folks are coming from. Looks like we have a few folks from Federal Way and some other locations. Thank you. Oh, a couple people from Milton. Thanks for being here today. We're glad to have everyone. As you heard, a recording of this virtual lunch and learn will be, there is a recording of this virtual lunch and learn. It's being recorded and it will be available on the project webpage in about a week. And another question is going to pop up on your screen in just a minute. We're interested to know how familiar you are with the WSDOT's Fish Passage Project. Okay, good. It looks like we have people with varying knowledge of the project. We're really glad to have everyone here today, and we hope everyone learns a little something new about the program. Before we get started, we wanted to cover a few tips on how to participate. To use the closed captions, you can click on the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and then click show subtitles. And that will bring up the subtitles for you to see. You're all on mute, which we've done to improve everyone's experiences today and reduce the background noise. If you're having trouble with the volume and you want to adjust that, you can click on the microphone button it's kind of on the bottom left of your screen and adjust the volume there. If you want to use if you're having any trouble with technology, you can use the chat button at the bottom of your screen, and we have someone who can help you, whether it's connecting to the transcriptions, helping you with the volume or anything like that. We'll do our best to help you. If you want to ask a question at any time during the presentation, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Olson with WSDOT to introduce the team that we have here today. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Kristen. So as Kristen said, my name is Chris Olson. I am the communications lead for this particular project. We have a few other members of the team here today, including Tim Now, who is the assistant project engineer, Tibi Yafrashua, who is the project manager. We've also got other folks from the design team and our environmental office here as well to answer questions. So during this lunch and learn, we're going to cover a number of different topics. We're going to talk about WSDOT's Fish Passage Program. We're going to talk specifically about this project on SR 164. We'll show you the existing conditions out there and why it's a problem. We're going to show you a couple examples of new fish passable structures. We're talking about how the work might affect traffic. We'll review the project timeline, and then we're going to give you information on how to stay up to date. But we're going to start off by playing a video about the state's Fish Passage Program and how it's making a difference.
Fish streams that have become blocked when they intersect a state highway affect migrating salmon's ability to access the full extent of some waterways. Correcting these barriers is an important part of the state's effort to protect and restore salmon runs and meet legal requirements from the federal government. WSDOT's efforts to correct fish passage barriers is part of a larger restoration effort, making an important contribution to salmon and steelhead recovery in Washington state. WSDOT has been correcting fish passage barriers since the early 1990s and has made significant progress.
Washington state has thousands of miles of streams that are home to salmon and other fish species. There are many crossings of those streams by roads and state highways, and often those crossings are barriers to fish passage. Washington State DOT has been working since the early 1990s with Department of Fish and Wildlife and tribes to identify fish passage barriers, to prioritize those and to correct those with structures that freely pass fish under the highway. We've been working for a long time on that type of work, and we've had good success with those projects.
So this is one of the success stories of our barrier adjustments. We're standing on the edge of State Route 531, where we used to have two culverts running underneath the highway. Both of those culverts were barriers to fish. Then there was a historic fish weir between them that was also a barrier to fish. Rather than shut down traffic here, we made the decision it was best for the fish, the stream, as well as the traveling public to just move the entire stream outside the roadway. We did that here about 2 years ago, and already this last fall we saw a significant number of returning fish that previously would have not been able to reach this point. They would have only been able to get just below our project site, and we have more than a mile of upstream gain that those fish can now go spawn in and rear their young.
Tulalip Tribes has worked hard with WashDOT to develop a strong working relationship with them. The goal is to help WashDOT succeed in implementing their fish passage program. We've already seen some fantastic successes with the program. We have fish coming back to areas where they were historically cut off, fish rearing in areas where they didn't used to be able to spend time. And yeah, we're really looking forward to continuing that working relationship and furthering the program.
Partnerships are critical to the success of delivering WashDOT's Fish Passage program. And as the program continues to grow, the relationships with its program partners will play a substantial role as WashDOT moves forward, continuing to remove fish barriers.
So we have corrected 365 barriers since 1991, improving access to more than 1,200 miles of upstream habitat. Since that video was made. Well, let me correct myself. We haven't corrected 365 since that video was made, but we've done that since 1991. We've just dropped a link to that video into chat if you want to watch it again later. I also want to mention that a 2013 federal court injunction also requires us to significantly speed up our work to replace culverts. And we're now working with area tribes to open 90% of habitat blocked by state culverts by 2030. Now, this cartoon that's on the screen right now shows many of the reasons that a culvert is considered impassable. The water might be running too fast, the pool in front of the culvert and the water running through it might be too shallow, or it's just too high for fish to successfully jump. The culverts on 161 have structures that are too small, too steep, and too shallow for successful fish migration. In addition, small structures are more likely to become blocked with debris or silt. Replacing them with larger structures increases the likelihood that fish will migrate and spawn successfully. That helps fish runs recover, benefiting us and other species, such as orcas, for example, which rely on fish as a primary food source. So now let's show you where this work is going to occur on SR 161. I'm going to start at the top of the map and work my way down. The dot at the top, the orange dot that's at the northernmost spot, is at milepost 34.71 near South 370th Street. South of that is the culvert at milepost 34.14, and the bottom dot is just north of Military Road South at milepost 34.03. So what is the problem with these culverts? Well, the pictures I'm about to show you are going to illustrate it very clearly. The existing culverts that carry these creeks under 161 are just too small. They range in size from just 18 to 24 inches in diameter. This particular one that you're looking at right now is the small concrete culvert at that northernmost location near South 370th Street. The middle culvert, it's not much better there on our next one. You can see it's very small. This was at milepost 34.14. And again, it's just too small for fish to successfully pass through. And our next picture is of the southernmost culvert at milepost 34.03. And you can just sort of make it out behind that fallen tree there. Now, all of these culverts are considered impassable for coho, resident trout, steelhead, and sea run cutthroat, all of which use Hylebos Creek and its tributaries. Fish have been documented in Hylebos Creek within 500 feet of these culverts. So better culverts, or better fish passable structures rather, will allow them to swim that extra 500 feet and continue up into the tributaries, which provide spawning and nursery areas. So now the question is, how do we fix them? We fix them by installing new structures that are bigger and better, like this one. This fish passable box culvert carries Patterson Creek under SR 202 near Sammamish. And as you can see, it is a far more welcoming environment with the addition of tree stumps or logs and other types of woody materials that help slow the creek and create natural resting areas for fish. Another benefit is that many of these structures are large enough to allow other kinds of wildlife to safely cross under the highway as well. Right now, we expect the structure at milepost 34.14, that's the one in the middle. It could look something like this. Here is an example of a bridge we built to carry Pussyfoot Creek under 164 between Auburn and Enumclaw, and we completed this bridge construction last year. And the new fish passages at the northern and southernmost locations on 161 will be bridges and may look something like this or along these lines. Now we're going to talk about traffic impacts, but I want to caution you before we really get into these. They're not finalized options. That's because the project is being built under a design build contract, which means that WashDOT completes the preliminary work on the new structures, or the preliminary design work on the new structures, but the selected contractor will complete that design, including the structure type, and then builds the structures. The construction techniques and efficiencies proposed by a design builder could result in fewer lane reductions and road closures than what we have listed here. But based on our projections right now, these are the parameters and what we expect. At least 4 weekends when both directions of SR 161 will need to be fully closed. SR 161 will likely need to be reduced to 1 lane in each direction for up to 6 months. So during that time, traffic will be shifted to the opposite side of the highway from where crews are working. You can anticipate that for 3 months, drivers will use lanes on one side of the highway, and then they'll shift to the other side for another 3 months. So there'd be 1 northbound and 1 southbound lane. I will also likely see some nightly lane closures, and just also want to mention that through traffic will be maintained except during the weekend full closures. Now I want to take a look at our project timeline. Most of the rest of this year will be taken up with WashDOT and the design build contractor completing the design work and developing construction plans. And something else to keep in mind is that because this project is being combined into one larger design build contract with fish passage replacement projects on I-90 near Bellevue and state routes 202 and 203 near Carnation and Falls City, the construction window is quite long to include all these locations. The earliest construction could start on 161 is 2023, but the design builder will create a construction schedule and decide where to start the work first and exactly when within this time period. Overall construction for Hylebos Creek will take about a year, but we expect the continuous lane reductions to last 6 months, as I previously mentioned. So we expect everything to be done by 2026. But again, we can't say right now when that in this 2023 to 2026 timeline work on 161 will occur. We are committed to keeping you updated on this project. And so over the past couple months, we've worked with local agencies, area tribes, and briefed local governments about this work. And as we get closer to construction and during the construction itself, we'll provide regular project updates. And you can get project updates by signing up for our email newsletter or contacting the project web team. And we'll also have them on our website when closures start occurring. Here are a couple of links that you can jot down and then type into your browser if you like later. We're also adding them to chat. To visit the project webpage, which has contact information on it, go to bit.ly/SR161fish. To receive updates for South King County projects, including this one, when we have things to share, you can sign up for the newsletter by going to bit.ly/WSDOT King Co South. And please note, these are case sensitive. As you copy those down, I want to note that when we talk about projects and related highway closures, we can get really focused on the disruption of a construction project and the lane closures, which is understandable because that's what's going to affect you most. But it's important that we come back also to the purpose here, which is that we all have a role to play in fish recovery. We all benefit from strong, healthy ecosystems that support bringing back populations of the fish species that have long been a cultural, economic, and nutritional bedrock in the Pacific Northwest. This project has the potential to open about 2 miles of waterways for fish habitat. and the return of natural stream conditions in these tributaries will boost spawning and rearing, which are vital steps to improving fish recovery rates. So this concludes our presentation to you today, and now we're going to turn to your questions. So Kristen, what have we got?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Before I launch into the questions, I just want to say, a couple times now we've referred to the chat box, and just in case it's not clear, if you click on that chat box at the bottom of your screen, that's where you can see some of these links and click right on them to save them for later. We have received a number of questions, and this is where, just a reminder to the project team, if you need to refer to a map, let us know and Rosalind can reshare the screen. This question is about the location at milepost 34.71. The question is, at milepost 34.71, there are upstream culverts that also will block this stream. And that stream goes through backyards. Can we speak to that, how that's being addressed?
We, at one of them, there is a culvert close enough to our project that we will be addressing that culvert. But for the most part, our requirement, our injunction that the WashDOT's working under requires us to fix culverts that are within WashDOT, that go under WashDOT roadways. And unless the culvert, like one that's relatively close to ours, and with time we grade out for making a nice stream, we impact that culvert too. We cannot fix anything outside of what is in DOT property. And it would be nice to do the whole corridor, a fish corridor, but a stream corridor, but that's not what we are allowed to do. So we can't do it. Sorry.
Thanks, Tim. This question is related to this locate. Oh, Ruth, were you going to add something to that one?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ruth Park. I'm with WashDOT Environmental Fish Passage. I was just going to add on to that, that often the DOT barriers are some of the most expensive and some of the most sort of limiting for that system. Many folks that are working for nonprofits or for local jurisdictions on fish passage for a long time, didn't think WashDOT ones would ever go away. And so it really can sort of spur a chain reaction for other parts of the stream to be fixed as well. And there are grants and other funds that are available for that too. So the idea is that we're doing our part to open a very difficult structure to fix, and then others can jump on as well and fix barriers that may be on their property.
And we have helped property owners to go get the grants on the 202. They have already fixed one of them because we helped them get a grant, and we are going to be coming with this project and fixing the one just upstream of theirs. So we do try to do more of the streams, but we have some severe limitations.
Okay, thanks, Tim. This one is related, but about the site at milepost 34.14. And the statement is there is only about a block's worth of additional stream expansion. So if that person wants to add a little more detail to that question, or if there's something you'd like to say, Tim.
It tied with the last time the last question we answered, in the fact that yes, there are blocks that are relatively close to ours, and like Ruth says, we're hoping this spurs on. The cities will start adding on. We've had that situation where the city is partnered with WashDOT with a culvert that was fairly close, and we're going to be in the project's doing both ours and the cities, because they had the money and they're ready to go. So yes, there is one just upstream of 34.14.
We can get back to you too, because the way that WashDOT has prioritized our work are that the barriers that we're doing sooner have a lot of upstream habitat gain. So there may only be a small amount that's visible, but what DFW, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, has actually characterized as stream, it goes much further. It just may be, some of it may be in culverts, some of it may be, which are, long pipes, and some of it, little pieces of it may be open, but the actual amount of habitat that was historically there that's available is, I think Hillary might have that number. It's probably 1,000 meters or more.
Yeah, so for this one, for 3414, which I think is the one that was the question, that's site ID 997974, and the lineal gain is 1,106 meters for that one. So although there are upstream barriers, I believe this number comes from assuming that those will be fixed in the long term, and so we will be actually getting over 3,000 feet of gain.
Thank you both. I don't know if this might be a good opportunity to introduce those attending today to the interactive map, where there's a lot of detail about each of these sites. Is that right? Yeah, right. So if we could, Nia, if you can add that to the chat, that would be great. And folks will have another link that for more information.
Yeah, our website, the WashDOT website, has a terrific fish passage map that shows all the fish passages in Western Washington and actually Eastern Washington now I think about it, but through Washington. It shows ones that have been corrected. It shows ones that have not been corrected. It shows which ones are subject to the federal injunction. And so you can go through and filter out and figure out what you're looking for. And then as you click through into it, if you find a particular one that you want to find out, you want to learn more about, there's information on there on, for example, the types of fish that use that particular creek, the amount of gain from habitat we would get if removing the barriers, et cetera. It's kind of a fun website or a project, excuse me, a fun page to poke around and look at.
Okay, thanks for adding that detail. And it looks like it has been added to the chat. Thank you. So we have a few questions about the traffic impacts. One I'll start with is, will there be any impacts, or will there be impacts to any side streets?
None of the 3 crossings that we are working on crosses the side streets. These are all ones that cross 161. We do get fairly close to, I'm drawing a blank, 28th. It's the one the one in the middle with one of them. And so there will be traffic control impacts where we're really close to the intersection. The design builder working on this project will be required to do a traffic analysis to see what the impact is, what is the best way to do the traffic control, because we're really close to that intersection, just to the south of it.
Okay, thanks. And as those traffic impacts the traffic control measures are put in place, there'll be more information later on the webpage to provide the details.
Correct.
Yeah, right. Okay, thanks. So sort of related. So this person's saying, I'm glad this project will happen. Should have been done at least 50 years ago. My concern is that traffic will use Milton's small roads and will be used as detours by drivers. I live on 23rd in Milton, and I'm wondering if WashDOT will post the local only signs in our area during the project. Is that an option?
It is. We have, like I said, they'll be developing what we call a traffic management plan that has to get approved. We are very conscious of the local streets. The city of Milton and Federal Way and will be involved in this traffic management plan. And so if there's an issue with them going on side roads, there will be measures taken to try to deter that. We expect a lot of our detours will be going on to I-5, but we have to see. It's still not a really great detour for it. But yeah, we look at it very happy. We have a special group in Northwest region whose job is to be the advocate for the driving people, the drive traffic. And so they have a big say in what we are allowed to do and what we can't do.
And Tim, I would just add to that. I think anytime we close a road and or do lane reductions, and it doesn't matter, whether it's, lane reductions on I-5 or 405 or, a smaller state highway, inevitably there will be some traffic that they know the area. And so they're going to take local roads. Our goal, and we talked to, Tim and I went down to the city of Milton last week, I think it was, and talked to the city council there. And I said, in some respects, when we have closures like this, traffic is like water. It finds the path of least resistance, if you will. So the job of the contractor is going to be to develop that path of least resistance as much as possible, to urge people to use the designated detour routes. It will also be our job as communicators to communicate those detour routes to folks, to make sure that we don't have to try to deter, heavy trucks or big trucks that don't belong on side streets or small city roads and everything, to keep those away from there. But it's inevitable that some will make their way there, some cars, just simply because they know the area. So we'll do our best to kind of steer people away as much as possible, but just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, this might be for Ruth or Hillary, I'm just gonna guess here. Is there a way to talk about how many fish, you've talked about miles, but how many fish will benefit from this project?
We cannot really, we don't have a way of quantifying how many fish will use that stretch of stream once it's open, but we do know that fish have documented use in East Fork Hylebos Creek, which these are all tributaries to. So we have a pretty good idea that we know that fish will be using that. But we really don't have any surveys or any kind of quantitative data to say how many are going to be.
And with that said, in the video we showed, Rob Wick showed up by SR 531, was talking about taking out the crossings and everything. And I went up there 2 years after they put it in, just under 2 years. I was really surprised at the amount of little frylings that are in there in that time frame in just a couple of years. There was a lot. So if we open it, I believe the fish will come.
And fish are smart, it's like there's this, it's true that fish go back to each stream where they were born at, right? But there's also ones that chart new paths. And so just because a particular, fish or their descendants haven't been to that stream, it doesn't mean they won't explore a new area. So there's really a long-term perspective here to say that this is the direction that we're going, is to create more stream habitat that's conducive with infrastructure.
Thanks. And related, it sounds like there is some, I'm looking at the questions and comments here, there's some concerns with the amount of money that's being spent for, a small section of stream or a small number of fish. Can someone address that?
Like they said, there's not how many fish are going to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
That is a question that comes. How much are we spending? We're under injunction. We have to spend what it takes to open up these passages, and construction on highways is expensive. That's just unfortunately is the nature of what we have to do.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
and actually this stretch is not as far as construction, not really that expensive. We're doing a fairly simple project here.
Thanks. So we have another question here. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. I work at the 55 plus community on Enchanted Parkway and 370th. My concern is the traffic impact to the response times for emergency vehicles to the community and going to the hospitals. How are you going to address this very important issue?
Per our contract, our RPR contract with the design builder, with the contractor, they have to have meetings with the emergency services, the aid units, the essential services, the school districts, all these municipalities, subgroups, and they have to show them what we're doing so that they're prepared for a alternative when we're closing. They also have to give them 14-day notice that we are going to be closing this roadway when they know exactly. So they are well informed on what's going to happen, and they get time to plan ahead to prepare for this. Some of these, most of these resource agencies, we've already talked to, even in design, with what kind of concerns they have, what are things they can't get around, and we try to work around that. So it should be minor, if any kind of difference in response time.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Let's see, we have another question about the specific type of structure. So what types of structure will be built for these culverts? Are you able to give any more detail?
A lot of the design is still will be developed by the design builder. So we're not sure exactly what size or what kind of structure. We know the size, we give them a box that they have to go through, and whether or not they go design, I don't want to get too technical, what type of different bridges, but there are different types of bridges that they're allowed to put in. As long as it meets the criteria of trying to get the fish through and make it look like to the fish that there's no roadway there, that we don't have this culvert anymore. We have a nice stream going underneath the roadway.
And I believe Tim, and maybe Conrad can join in as well, if I'm recalling my presentation correctly, since I don't have my notes up in front of me. I believe the ones on the northernmost and the southernmost, those are supposed to be a bridge of some kind. And the middle one will be some kind of box culvert. Is that correct? Is that how I'm remembering what I just said 20 minutes ago?
Yes, it is. And there is, when we say that, there is different types of box culverts, there's different type of bridges. So what exactly is going to look like? We're putting a little bit more, because the middle one is by an intersection, and with all the illumination and the signals, we need foundations for those pieces of equipment. We need a little bit more depth underneath the ground. So having a bridge is not ideal at the middle one. But other than that, the other ones we are going to be putting in, it would look more like a typical bridge, but but what exactly it'll look like is still up in the air.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about utility relocation and how that's happening, who's paying for that, if it's happening.
I was hoping somebody from our utility group could be here to answer that. That is a very complicated question on the fact, because some of the utilities are on what we call franchises, some are there by easement. I think almost all this is franchise, which means that the utility companies will have to pay for the relocation. Some of these are going to be done by our contractor, some are going to be done, the utility company is going to relocate them. So there's, depending on the utilities, and we have a lot of utilities in SR 161. So it's depending on the utilities, there's different answers.
Okay, Thanks, Tim. More questions are coming in. This is great. Thank you for all the questions. This is how much advance notification will residences receive before construction starts?
So this is probably the better one for me to answer. These this particular project, where it's going to have a designated communications person working on it, which means that and as part of their job, what they'll like to do is to do outreach to the community, whether it's through additional open houses, either in person or online. That might be also include, I believe we also have in there that we're going to have them send out flyers to the affected areas about the construction with most likely sort of like a general schedule. And then in some areas, if there's going to be noise associated with it, they'll have to send out noise flyers, usually a week or more in advance of when the noisy work occurs. But there is going to be an ongoing campaign, if you will, to keep people informed, so that as we get closer to construction, whenever that occurs between 2023 and 2026, it won't come as a surprise to folks.
Okay, thank you. So we talked a lot about fish and how they would use these streams after this work is done. There's a question here. This person's wondering if fish use these streams at all right now, currently.
So I can speak to that. We do have documented and presumed use in East Fork of Hylebos Creek, and these are all tributaries to that. So we know that coho, sea run cutthroat, resident trout, and steelhead are using East Fork Hylebos, and that's about 500 feet downstream of the 3471 barrier, and 1.2 miles downstream of the southern two barriers. So we do know that there is use there. We do not have any official surveys or documented use in those tributaries right now that we're fixing. But we know that by providing habitat and opening up those areas, we can assume that fish from East Fork Hylebos will likely benefit from this correction and use the additional habitat.
I would just add, into there, one of the reasons why, why we're replacing these areas is because, they are barriers. Fish can't get past them for the most part. They're, like I said, they're too small. The water runs too fast. It's too shallow. It's too steep. So once we remove those barriers, then fish are more than likely going to keep swimming farther upstream to those better, or additional habitat areas where they can spawn, and where fish can, small fish can grow up big and strong for their trip back to the sea. But we have to remove those barriers first.
So this is just a comment that I thought I would share. Someone mentioned that they grew up fishing Hylebos Creek and saw coho, chum, and steelhead upstream into King County in the 70s. Thank you for sharing. And we've been talking a lot about culverts and what's there and what's going to go in. And there was kind of the simple question of, what is a culvert? Can you put that in simpler terms?
That is it's like, what is a bridge? We could give you 5 different examples of terminology. What is a bridge, depending on what resource agency or engineer you're talking to. A culvert's the same thing. It's just a way to pass water underneath a roadway. In our case, is all what a culvert is. It can be anything from a round circular pipe that is made out of concrete, metal. There's all sorts of different ways. It could be a box concrete culvert that is just a rectangular shaped channel. When we talk about culverts, we're talking about something that is not a bridge. It's very constrained, and it's only designed to handle the quantity of water, not designed for allowing the fish to move through it. And that's where we have gotten in, why we are having to change and replace these, is because we designed for how much can we get enough water, can enough water flow through. Heaven forbid I designed some of these in my past life. And so this is, we got to look at the fish and say, okay, what else is using this waterway? And this is designing to help these fish use this waterway. We should have, like someone said, it should have been done 50 years ago. Yeah, we should have, but we just didn't know.
I'm actually wondering if Rosalind, perhaps, because we gave we showed a couple examples of the culverts, the existing culverts. And maybe she can call up one of those slides and share that screen again, for the individual and anyone else who might have joined late and didn't see, what we mean when we talk about a culvert.
That's a good idea.
But it is,
Oh.
I think, like Tim said, it is a structure of some type that's going to carry water under, generally a highway under, you see them under driveways as well. If you've got ditches on either side of your driveways and there's a pipe that runs underneath the driveway. So there's, you can see is the round culvert that carries one of the, I think that's the northernmost tributary, the pipe for the northernmost tributary. And that's not designed to really let fish through. There's another example.
And if you look at the stream, well, look at that stream, look at the width, the flow through there. Imagine all that water going through that small pipe. And you can see how much harder it would be to swim up through that when you have that much water going through there.
Or in some cases, not enough water.
Well, yeah, too. That too. But
Yeah.
Yep.
So before you close that out, Rosalind, we don't really have, I guess, pictures of this, but along the same lines, we're talking about culverts and how it's sort of helping the fish. Someone asked about if you could give more examples of what some of the other barriers.
Other types of barriers. Well, this one has velocity, what we call, makes it a little too hard for the fish to swim up and down, because we have to look at all stages of life for the fish. Ruth probably better has some good examples.
Well, I was thinking there's that cartoon slide that we have a couple back that has,
Oh, that's right.
on that has kind of the velocity barrier, the hydraulic drop barrier. There we go. And some of those different types of barriers to fish. So velocity meaning, well, that top left, the water's coming too fast, fire hose, the fish can't get through. Sometimes there's on the top right there, fish need a launch pool. They need to be able to go deeper to get enough action to jump up. Think about like a cascade structure in a natural stream. So there's not enough of a pool for there. There might be enough water depth in the culvert, like that one on the middle left, or it's just simply too high. A lot of these culverts may have been built pretty even with the stream, but streams change over time and that can drop, and it's too high for a fish to jump up. I'm not sure what the bottom one's trying to represent. I don't know if the juveniles, thinking about like maybe an adult fish is big enough, strong enough, able to get through, but how about the juveniles being able to kind of get up and down? So that, our charge now is for all fish at all life stages, at all flows, right? So it has to be in the summertime when it's low flows, they got to be able to move up and down. In the winter, when the streams are raging, they got to move up and down and everything in between.
Thank you very much. We have another question that came in. Here we go. Will this end up reducing flooding on properties next to streams? That is my biggest concern.
Well, it won't. It's dangerous to say that it will help. I will say that we will make it not any worse upstream. We do have to do a traffic analysis on this. Flooding analysis, but design builder will do. So far, we have done on one of them or two of them, and has shown that there is the flooding downstream is actually is really close to what it is right now. It's not very little change. We are not changing the amount of water going down. We're just making it smoother, flatter. With a lot of these streams, we want to slow down the water going through, but we have it over a wider area. So the amount of water coming through it stays very similar. So any kind of flooding will stay very similar to what it is now. As we found with the other ones, it was actually downstream of our culverts that situations downstream from where our culvert was, that was actually causing the flooding issue. And so it won't be any better or worse than what it was right now.
Mhm. Okay. And how were these locations chosen?
Ruth, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so what WashDOT has is a prioritization plan for all of our culverts throughout the state. And for ones in the injunction area, so that's kind of Puget Sound area, that's where we have a culvert case that we're addressing. For each of those sites, we have reports from DFW, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and what they've done is identified the potential upstream gain. So how much habitat is available above that crossing? Some of them might be 50, it's all in meters. Some of it might be 50 meters, some of them might be 300, some of them might be 3,000. So the state has an obligation to fix 90% of our habitat to make that available, 90% of what's currently blocked by the year 2030. And our approach to that has been to start with the biggest ones. And so the ones that have more habitat gain, we're doing sooner, with the idea being to be able to get fish to have access to more habitat as soon as we can. And so the ones that we've already done in the last few years have been some of the largest habitat gain locations. There's one in Olympic region, Hylebos Creek, that's like 35 miles or something, because the blockage was kind of right at the Pacific Ocean there. Tons of habitat upstream. So these ones, I think Hillary said one of them was 1,100. I think the other ones were kind of, or 11,000, excuse me, meters. Correct me if I'm wrong. 100?
Yeah, 1,106
Thank
for
you.
one of them. I can look up the other ones too.
And so that's how these ones were chosen. And then further, WashDOT's trying to be cognizant of kind of bundling our projects and, not just doing these one at a time, but doing them together when we can. So we minimize those traffic impacts, the impacts to the public, and try to do these as efficiently as possible. So balancing that, needs of the fish, environment, needs of the traveling public.
Thanks, Ruth. And before you go on mute, this question might be for you. How will this impact other wildlife in the area?
Yeah, I'll let Hillary maybe speak to more of the particulars if she has that handy for the site. But in general, all of our sites have a wildlife crossing analysis that's done as well. So we have studies, information, data about what wildlife use our highways, what try to cross. We have data, carcass data, what species might not make it across the highway. And we have again, there's a big prioritization plan for where we're going to address those things first. But for every time we're doing a fish passage crossing, we put that lens on as well, and to say, what's the opportunity for habitat for other species here for crossing, and do we need to factor in something different in terms of our crossing? Do we need to make it taller? Do we need to make it a little wider? Do we need to think about a particular type of exclusion, fencing, or type of bank that deer or ungulates may want to walk on? There's a bunch of considerations. So I would expect it'd be things like deer and small mammals because it's such an urban area. But Hillary, do you know any more of the particulars?
Yeah, so there was a wildlife connectivity analysis done, and this one did not rank as requiring a wildlife connectivity consideration. So typically that would mean, like Ruth was saying, we make it tall enough for certain animals to be able to pass through. This one does not, based on the data we have, appear to have be a corridor for a lot of wildlife to cross through. I do believe at least on 2 of them, I think the northernmost and southernmost, I believe that the height of the culvert is actually still pretty tall anyway for other reasons that potentially could pass wildlife, but it is not built with that in mind. It's built with fish passage specifically in mind.
And you're correct. It's the most northern, most southern ones have a higher clearance inside.
Okay, thank you. We are getting near the end of our time. Just wanted to put that out there. If others want to put questions in to the question and answer. There is
Chris,
a question. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, Kristen, there was one that I saw that somebody who had joined late and they wanted to know when construction would start and end, which is a little bit of a complicated question. So this project is being combined with a fish passage project on I-90 near Factoria and another one on 202 and 203 near Carnation and Fall City. So because there are 3 very separate locations that are combined into a single project, the construction window is quite long to accommodate all of those. So the construction window runs from 2023 to 2026. That does not mean, however, that this particular location on 161 is going to take that entire time. It'll probably take about, I think, Tim, you said about a year from beginning to end. When it starts, whether it's 2023, 2024, or 2025, we don't know yet until a contractor develops their construction schedule. It could be as early as 2023. But until we see that schedule, we can't say for sure when in that window construction here will start.
Okay, thanks. And along those lines, there are a couple more questions. One of them is about construction impacts. What time of day will most closures occur? And I know there's a little bit about that in the presentation. Are you able to say more? It's possible the person asking missed that part of the presentation.
We do have in the presentation, we talked about the long-term closures, one where we're shutting down 1 lane each direction and then shifting that one lane to the one side so that we get work on half the bridge and then shifted over to the other sides. Those will be 24/7 for, depending on the location, a few months. The credit for 6 to 9 months.
180 days per side. Is
180 days. Okay, 6 months. And so that we'll be working out there for about a year on the long-term closures. They will also be some nighttime closures that may be before, after, or even during the other closures. Those will be at nighttime. And because during the day, there's too much traffic out there and they're not allowed to take a lane during that time. And there'll be like a single lane closure with alternating traffic flagging, traffic alternating on the single lane opening. That'll be all developed by the design builder in their traffic management plan.
Thank you. There's a question if the presentation will be available later. Yeah, we are recording the presentation and this question and answer session, and it will be available on the webpage in about a week. So if you're wanting to reference that, it will be there. Looks like we do have another question. This person is wondering if the team has walked or looked, been on site to visit the area.
We have been on site a few times, quite a few times. look at it. Best way to look at stuff is to be out there and take a look. We have walked through it with the city of Milton. We have walked out there with, I can't remember the housing development,
Yeah, HOA
Yeah, the HOA.
representative.
We were out there for that. We've been out there a few times.
And then, yeah, to add, we have done wetland delineations, bank full width visits, so measuring the stream. A lot of different groups have been out there for a lot of different reasons. And then WDFW has walked the whole stretch and evaluated upstream and downstream of our crossings.
And just to clarify, that's the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and of course, geotechnical drilling, surveying, meetings with property owners, stormwater investigation, whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I've been there many, many times.
Thanks all. So we're nearing the end of our time. I'm not seeing any additional questions, but wanted to, again, just pause for a minute before we end, but also to give Tim and Chris a chance to say any final words.
Tim, you don't have you don't have any final words. I just wanted to thank everyone for their participation today. A reminder, a recording of this virtual lunch and learn presentation will be available on our project website. It'll probably be about a week or so before it gets up there. And just again, thank you so much for attending and some great questions that we got today. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone about this.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Goodbye.